So, Mike, I'm also I'm studying history in a master's program at a college on the online. I'm finding too, looking at the origins of the United States Constitution and the intent, the original intent, and how it's been through the 200 or more years, how it's been rearranged, basically, and how it's been diluted and distorted, and it's very interesting how, and then how people have bought into it. And I'm looking at other students and how they're being basically conditioned to see it in a certain way through the homework and through the curriculum. So it's been I appreciate how you look at it in terms of a context of through your research and how it's been from the original to now, and how it's been basically subjugated to a different form even than what it was originally intended to.
I can give you a little clarification on that part. Most people are not familiar with the American common law, but it is a foundation for a lot of things, and of course the laws of cause and effect are part of all that. Most people engage in things every day that they have no idea what the consequences are for what they're doing. But our system, as it was established, and as the Constitution was intended, was to secure the unalienable sovereign rights of the people, both individually and collectively, from any entity. Internal, external, made no difference. The only reason the Constitution itself was actually written was to set up a government whose sole job was to secure the borders and prevent any element, either internal or external, from breaching the trust and the security of the sovereignty and people within the country. And of course, each state was sovereign unto itself. Each state had its own constitution. The people in each state were sovereign individually, and it was from that sovereignty in the private side that the collective body of the government was secure. So we're not talking about a bunch of people that are changing who and what they are in the system. We're talking about a system that was created and maintained by the founding principles of the system. So everything has evolved now over a course of many, many years. They've changed certain elements about the system, how you identify yourself, what you do in life, the permissions you must ask, the taxes you must pay, and all these things. They've all come out of the progression of an alien force that has invaded our system from within, and the people have succumbed to it. So going back to the principle of it, the common law rules, cause and effect, that's the law, that's how it works, but it's no longer enforced in the minds of the people. They've lost the righteousness within themselves. They don't know the principle of right action. And that was something that was mentioned in one of the master's books back a ways. And it just happened to be a very, very powerful statement for me, because it's exactly what's taking place right now. And the people are slowly waking up that something's wrong. Again, they just don't know what it is.
Are you saying that there's no more, there's a misunderstanding of what the original intent was?
It's more than a misunderstanding. The intent was simple. It was like the principle I explained earlier about the child who leaves the parents at 21. Imagine this. The people that were here, they had a king that was standing over them, followed them here. He brought his rules, laws, regulations, titles. Everything about him was with those people. They admitted to it in the Declaration of Independence. They called themselves the subjects of the crown. They knew who they were. But at the Revolution, all that reversed. There was no longer a king, no longer a crown, no longer a monarch. There was no longer any rule outside their own group that could tell them what they could or couldn't do. like when you leave your parents. Your parents are no longer associated with you from the standpoint of control. That's what happened to the people. The Constitution was created for a government, not for the people. That was a rule for trustees over a trust. The trust was the Constitution. The trust was to secure those unalienable rights to the people, to secure their individual sovereignty and their capacity to rule according to a common law, which is commonly known as the law of sovereignty. I can't even imagine, most people don't understand how their family unit works, and it's exactly the same principle. You have the mother, the father, and the children. Well, the children don't tell the parents what to do. It's the other way around. And yet, when the children become 21, the parents no longer have power over them. That's exactly what happened to the people who evolved from England, Europe, who came here and created the revolution and then the Constitution. They stepped out from beneath the ruling parent, the crown. They now became the sovereign themselves. And yet they've allowed themselves, through all of these very finely tuned, very deceptively worded rules, regulations, and the like, to allow themselves to fall right back into the exact same scenario that the founders fought the revolution to eliminate. So it's been here the whole time. The people are not exercising. I'm sorry about the airplane, Bob. The people are not exercising the things that they were born with because they've been led to believe they don't exist, or they've never been taught that there's something else there that they should be looking at. And the government, this is the real kicker. There isn't a single agent in the system, and I could probably mention one possible exception, but I don't know that to be 100% yet, who is not, as we speak, guilty of treason inside our system, county, city, state, federal, the whole bunch of them, because they're all on the snake's payroll. They all get paid by that fictitious alien element called the Federal Reserve. And that's another whole step in all of this. But until the people wake up to what's really going on and start learning who and what they are, who their parents really were, and I'm not talking about from their mom and dad, I'm talking about from the founders of this system, until they know what those people did and why and who it was for and what their duty is to maintain it. You know, I could create a scenario in a city where everybody there would be living in total equal cohabitation with each other. There would be no rules, no regulations, no consequences, none of that stuff, because each and every one would understand his relationship with every other individual. And that would be total harmony amongst a group of individuals. Well, that's what our system was set up for. That's how it was intended. Now, whose fault is it that it's gone the way it has? Well, you can blame it on a lot of elements, a lot of people. But you know what? We've all been here before. And there's some of us who know exactly where we were before and what we did and what it is that's brought us back again to look at this thing and say, whoa, wait a minute. What the heck has happened to this? And that's kind of what's going on right now. And I'm not the only guy here that knows about this stuff. But it's been a long time getting to an open forum discussion where we can actually start to talk about these things openly so more people can realize and understand that it's not scary at all. I mean, what's the big deal about walking into an agency, handing the rule of law, say, look, guys, this is what I have a right to. I want it now. And if you don't give it to me, there's a grand jury over here that's probably going to bring down an indictment of treason against you for not doing what the law requires for my status, my sovereignty. And this is one of the steps that's in the process. I've already been engaged in most of the things I'm telling you about. So I know how they work. I know what the steps are. And I know who ultimately the people are whose heads are going to roll because they didn't do what they should have been doing all along. They took an oath and they've taken a whole left-hand turn and taken everybody with them. Yeah,
I know, Mike. You've been doing a lot on your own, and you've done a lot of research. And I've been doing some reading and researching too on the internet about other types of and forms of community. You could say government, but there's a lot of examples out there, like the indigenous people, of course, where they have very little restrictions because they live with the natural environment. So they get, it's more about survival than keeping people safe, and which the government claims they're doing, especially this president. It's more about survival and really making sense of your environment and the community that you're in and the people you're working with. So they're a very good example of how people can exist with each other and not ruin the environment. So, and then there's another, I just saw something on Facebook the other day about a homeless group in Hawaii that formed their own little community, and they have their own, they have a few rules there because they don't want to let anybody in there because it disrupts things, it disrupts a certain consciousness that they build. But it can be done without the big government coming in and telling you what to do. It's just like you say, it's like, don't be afraid to create your own basically position and with your own community. And we're not talking about revolution or taking down the existing government. We're not that at all. We're not about that at all. We're just saying that there can be other ways of doing this and living and existing. And primarily, though, it's the environment that we're killing right now, and we want to get back to relating to the environment in a way that it doesn't destroy it. And that's really will be a true community. Did you have something, Bob?
Yeah, well, thank you, Val, and thank you, Mike. Well, before I say anything, Mike touched on it, but I want to follow through. Before I add any of my comments, I think it's very, very important for people to understand that, and as Mike said, a lot of people are kind of clueless about the law, but it's not only that they're clueless about law, common law, and all that kind of stuff, and they wonder why, how come we think we have rights and we really don't. But the most important thing that I think that we need to share on this show is what Mike alluded to, is there are actually guides out there from the real side of life that can help anybody that's listening to this can access that information, and they can ask them any question they want, whether it's religion or whether or not they should pay their taxes or, meet with a lawyer or meet with a priest or what, get married or not. All these questions can be answered by these real guides. And the way we contact these real guides is they listen for that special sound that Mike was alluding to earlier, and that is the new you sound. And for everybody that really is searching to find the answers, now I used to be a truth seeker, but I'm no longer a truth seeker. I realize that seeking the truth is not the answer. The answer is to find out what makes sense. And these real guides will guide you and show you what makes sense. And the way you contact the real guides is you sing new you, and you do it for about 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night, and you do it day after day. And that will show your intent that you really want to get out of this haze of lack of understanding, and you want to find out what's really going on. And so the way I sing to you, you can do it any way you want, but I do it something like this. I sing it, new you, and I do that over and over. I do it every morning and every night and other times in the middle of the day. And the real guides are listening for that. Anybody that's willing to do the new you song, the real guides will step right in, and you can ask them any questions you want, and they will answer your questions either in your dream state or during your daily life. They will have things pop up that show the answer. People will, you'll see a ad on a poster board, or you'll see something in the newspaper that will direct you to getting the answer that you've been searching for. So that was one thing I really wanted to share right off the bat. You have anything you want to add to that, Val?
I had something I could add to that.
Okay.
That answer, that's the critical part of the whole thing. And most people, they will get an impression of something that they think is the right thing to do, but then they will wait a little bit and get another answer that isn't the one that was given first. And it's always that first impression that's the key. And most people hear that, and then they don't act on it, and then pretty soon they've got another answer, and they're way off base. And if they keep doing that, if they're not paying attention to that very first impression, the first answer that comes, they're going to find themselves on a hard road.
Well, I'm sure everybody's different on that, because sometimes, you'll be given the answer, but the nice thing about the real guides on the real side is they are patient. So if you miss the message the first time around and you keep singing new you and showing your intent, they will continue to work with you until they get through to you. So I'm not sure that people have to worry about. All right. So anyway, the thing that I wanted to talk about on this legal issue, I mean, you've been talking a lot about how these people came from Europe and came to the United States and set up this free system. Well, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the background just for a few minutes. I know we're running out of time, but one of the things that I thought was very interesting, like when I was in high school, I was, this was back in the 60s. It was before the time of a lot of our listeners, but in world history, actually, believe it or not, they actually talked about this group of people that actually were the rulers of Europe, and they called them blue bloods, and they were all related to each other. It was like you'd have the Queen of England and their nephew or something would be the King of France, and it was like all over Europe, and it was like one intricate family, and we know, at least from my research, that they never married outside their family. And they were called blue bloods because they had this one characteristic trait, and I think that stems back. If anybody wants to take the time to read the history of Zechariah Sitchin wrote a bunch of books, which are really history books, and what these history books talk about is they talk about a time on Earth when this group of beings from the Orion star system came to Earth and kind of took over the Earth, and they modified the DNA of some of the simians on the Earth and made human beings by doing DNA alterations, and created Adam and Eve, and they set them up to be slave labor, and even maybe even to be used as food, because they are so much more intelligent than human beings. They created human beings. They have the capability of traveling from Orion into our planet, into our solar system, so they know all about space travel. They know all about DNA manipulation, and they're extremely advanced, and they set up the system on the Earth, and as back in the 60s, they must have thought people were stupid because they bragged about how they were ruling the Earth through divine right. Well, their divine right was the fact that they actually conquered the Earth. And so you have all these people here, and then David Icke wrote a very interesting book that I would recommend for everybody. It's called The Biggest Secret, where he actually talks about these blue bloods and the fact that some of them have shape-shifting capability, and the fact that these beings that came from Orion to take over the planet Earth and rule over Earth actually have a reptilian form. and they became the leadership of our country. And that's a very interesting study for people.